The rain was merciless that October afternoon in Lagos, turning the streets into rivers of mud and filth, but nothing could dampen Chioma's spirits as she sped through the flooded roads in her brand-new Range Rover, a gift from her fiancé, Emeka Okonkwo, one of Nigeria's youngest billionaires. She was on her way to yet another luxury spa appointment, her phone pressed to her ear as she bragged to her friends about the upcoming society wedding of the year. Then she saw her, an old woman, hunched under a torn umbrella, sitting by the roadside begging. Without a second thought, Chioma accelerated, deliberately driving through the massive puddle beside the beggar. Dirty water exploded upward, drenching the old woman completely. Through her rearview mirror, Chioma watched the woman struggle to wipe the filth from her face, and she laughed. She actually laughed. "These beggars are everywhere," she muttered, speeding away without a care in the world. What Chioma didn't know was that the old woman she had just humiliated was Mama Okonkwo, Emeka's mother, who had been searching the streets for the spoiled fiancé her son refused to let her meet. And in exactly 7 days, at the pre-wedding dinner, their worlds would collide in the most devastating way possible. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our stories of life, karma, and redemption. Chioma Adalik had always believed she was destined for greatness. Born into a moderately wealthy family in Lekki, she grew up watching her mother's social climb, attending every high society event, befriending the wives of politicians and oil magnates. From childhood, her mother had drilled one lesson into her: marry rich, marry well, and never look back at those beneath you. When Chioma met Emeka Okonkwo at a tech conference 2 years ago, she knew she had hit the jackpot. Emeka was everything she had been raised to want. At 32, he had built a fintech empire from scratch, appeared on Forbes Africa's list, and owned properties across 3 continents. He was handsome, educated, and most importantly, wealthy beyond measure. Their courtship was a whirlwind of private jets, designer shopping sprees, and photographs that made her friends green with envy. Emeka was generous, perhaps too generous, showering her with gifts and never questioning her expensive tastes. Within a year, he proposed with a diamond ring that cost more than most people's houses, and Chioma's mother nearly fainted with joy. But there was one strange thing about Emeka. He never spoke about his family. Whenever Chioma asked about his parents, he would change the subject or give vague answers. "I'll introduce you when the time is right," he would say with a mysterious smile. Chioma assumed his family was equally wealthy and prestigious, probably living abroad. She imagined elegant in-laws who would welcome her into a world of even greater luxury. What she didn't know was that Emeka's mother, Mama Okonkwo, lived in a modest flat in Surulere, the same neighborhood where Emeka had grown up in poverty. Mama Okonkwo had been a street food vendor who worked herself to the bone to put Emeka through university. She sold akara and pap every morning at dawn, saved every naira, and prayed every night that her son would have the opportunities she never had. Emeka loved his mother deeply, but he was terrified of how his sophisticated fiancé would react to his humble origins. He had carefully crafted an image of old money and inherited wealth, never correcting people when they assumed his success was generational. He planned to introduce Chioma to his mother after the wedding, hoping that by then, love would have made her more accepting. But Mama Okonkwo was no fool. She had watched her son become distant, heard the evasiveness in his voice when she asked about his bride-to-be. She had not been invited to the engagement party, had not met the woman who would become her daughter-in-law. The exclusion hurt her deeply, but more than that, it worried her. What kind of woman was her son marrying? What kind of woman would make him ashamed of his own mother? So that rainy October day, Mama Okonkwo had decided to see for herself. Emeka had mentioned that Chioma frequented a particular spa in Victoria Island. Mama Okonkwo, dressed in her oldest clothes, took public transport across the city and waited near the spa, hoping to catch a glimpse of her future daughter-in-law. When the Range Rover appeared and she saw the beautiful young woman inside, Mama Okonkwo's heart had lifted with hope. But that hope shattered the moment Chioma deliberately drove through the puddle, soaking her with filthy water, and sped away laughing. Mama Okonkwo stood there in the rain, dirty water dripping from her clothes and face, and she wept, not for herself, but for her son. This was the woman he had chosen. This was the person who would carry the Okonkwo name. In that moment, she made a decision. She would attend that wedding, invited or not, and she would make sure her son knew exactly who he was about to marry. Meanwhile, Chioma had completely forgotten about the incident by the time she reached the spa. To her, the old beggar was nothing, less than nothing, just one of the unfortunate masses she was destined to rise above. She spent the afternoon getting pampered, posting photos on social media with captions about self-care and luxury, receiving hundreds of admiring comments from her followers. That evening, when Emeka came home to their shared penthouse, he found Chioma in high spirits. She showed him fabric samples for the wedding reception, discussed the guest list, and talked excitedly about their honeymoon plans in the Maldives. Emeka watched her with adoration, completely unaware of what she had done that afternoon. "I can't wait for you to meet my mother," he said suddenly. Chioma looked up from the fabric samples, surprised. "Finally? When?" "At the pre-wedding dinner next week. She's coming down from. She's been traveling, but she'll be there." Emeka's voice held a note of anxiety that Chioma completely missed. "Wonderful," Chioma said breezily. "I'm sure we'll get along perfectly. I'm excellent with mothers." The week passed in a blur of final preparations. The pre-wedding dinner was scheduled for the Saturday before the main wedding, an intimate gathering of just 50 people. The Karmi de la Karmi of Lagos society. Chioma's mother had helped her select a stunning designer dress, and she was confident she would dazzle everyone, including her mysterious future mother-in-law. On the evening of the dinner, the private event hall glowed with candlelight and flowers. Chioma made her entrance like a queen, her dress shimmering with crystals, her makeup flawless. She worked the room effortlessly, charming Emeka's business associates and their wives, playing the role of the perfect society bride. Emeka seemed nervous, constantly checking his phone and glancing toward the entrance. "My mother should be here soon," he told Chioma. "Stop worrying," she laughed, squeezing his hand. "I'm going to love her, and she's going to love me." Then the doors opened, and Mama Okonkwo walked in. She was dressed simply but elegantly in traditional Igbo attire, her head held high despite the modest nature of her clothing. The room didn't fall silent immediately. Most people didn't notice her entrance at all, but Emeka's face lit up like the sun. "Mama," he called out, rushing toward her with genuine joy. Chioma turned to look, and her heart stopped. Even from across the room, even in different clothes, she recognized that face. The face of the beggar she had soaked with dirty water. Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Mama Okonkwo's eyes found Chioma's across the room, and a look of recognition passed between them. But Mama Okonkwo's face showed no surprise. She had known exactly who would be here tonight. Emeka, oblivious to the tension, led his mother toward Chioma. "Mama, this is Chioma, my fiancé. Chioma, this is my mother, the woman who gave me everything." Chioma's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her mind was racing. This couldn't be happening. This poor woman, this beggar, was Emeka's mother. Impossible. There had to be some mistake. But Mama Okonkwo extended her hand, her voice calm and measured. "It's nice to finally meet you, Chioma. Although, in a way, we've already met, haven't we?" The color drained from Chioma's face. I don't. "Last week," Mama Okonkwo continued, her voice carrying clearly in the suddenly quiet room. "In the rain, near the spa on Adiola Odeku Street. You were in a Range Rover, I was by the roadside." Emeka looked between the two women, confused. "What are you talking about?" Mama Okonkwo kept her eyes on Chioma. "Your fiancé drove through a puddle and soaked me with dirty water. On purpose." Then she laughed as she drove away. The entire room had gone silent now. All 50 guests were watching the scene unfold. "Mama, there must be some mistake," Emeka said, his voice strained. "Chioma would never." "I would never what, Emeka?" Chioma found her voice suddenly, and it was sharp with panic and anger. Your mother was dressed like a beggar. How was I supposed to know who she was? She looked like every other person on the street asking for handouts. The words hung in the air like poison. Emika's face changed. The warmth drained from his eyes, replaced by something cold and terrible. What did you just say? Chioma realized her mistake too late. I didn't mean, Emika. I just meant that my mother, because she wasn't dressed in designer clothes, deserved to be treated like garbage? His voice was quiet, but everyone in the room could hear the fury beneath it. That anyone asking for help deserves to be humiliated? That's not what I meant. Chioma's voice rose desperately. Emika, please. You have to understand. I understand perfectly, Emika said, his voice breaking. Do you know why I never introduced you to my mother before? Because I was ashamed. Not of her, never of her, but of myself. I was afraid you wouldn't accept where I came from. I was afraid you'd look down on us. And I was right. Mama Okonkwo placed a gentle hand on her son's arm. Emika. No, Mama. Let me finish. He turned back to Chioma, and tears were streaming down his face now. My mother raised me alone after my father died. She sold food on the streets, worked from dawn until midnight, every single day for 20 years. She wore the same 3 dresses for 5 years so she could afford my school fees. She ate once a day so I could eat 3 times. Everything I am, everything I have, exists because of this woman you soaked with dirty water and laughed at. Chioma was crying too now, mascara running down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Exactly. Emika cut her off. You didn't know. And that's the problem. You didn't need to know she was my mother to treat her with basic human dignity. You didn't need to know who she was to not deliberately humiliate a stranger. The fact that you did it at all, that you could do it at all, tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. He pulled the engagement ring from his pocket. He had been planning to give her a matching wedding band that night and set it on the nearest table. The wedding is cancelled. The relationship is over. I'm sorry to have wasted your time. Conclusion. 6 months later, Chioma sat in her apartment. No longer the penthouse but a modest place her parents helped her rent. The scandal had been immediate and brutal. Videos from the dinner party had leaked online, and she had become Lagos's most infamous example of karma served cold. She had learned a terrible lesson about character, about how we treat people when we think no one important is watching, about how our actions toward the vulnerable reveal our true selves. Emika and Mama Okonkwo, she heard, were doing well. He had introduced his mother at public events, proudly telling their story, and his reputation had only grown stronger. As for Chioma, she was starting over, trying to become someone different, someone better. Whether she would succeed remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, she would never forget the old woman in the rain, and the price she paid for one thoughtless, cruel moment. Because in the end, character isn't about how we treat those who can do something for us. It's about how we treat those who can do nothing for us at all.